Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed we do. Lots of things happening here and around the world. We are, of course, looking towards New Hampshire. Does anyone, Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis, have any shot at defeating Trump at this point? And in a sign that the answer is no, the beep stakes have already started.
Yes.
So we'll get into all of that. We're also going to take a look at the economy, a little vibe check. How are people actually feeling about the economy as we head into the general election? There was an election in Taiwan that may have a lot of broader implications for their relationship with China, for us as well. So we'll take a look at that. We're also following big updates out of Israel, where Netanyahu is proclaiming this thing could last for years. Of course, as we've been discussing for a while now, he has every incentive to basically make this war on Gaza and on Hezbollah and whoever else he wants to take on last indefinitely so he can maintain his grip on power. And this comes as the Houthis are striking back after the U.S. decided to redesignate them as a terror group. Also excited to have an Australian journalist in the show today, Anthony Lowenstein, who is taking a look at the way that Palestinians are used effectively as guinea pigs for testing out new weapons systems. So a lot to get to this morning.
Yeah, there's certainly, it's going to be interesting. I'm actually excited to talk to him. But before we get to that, we do have an election discount. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. So we've got 25% off on our yearly subscription. That's at breakingpoints.com. You guys can help us out. We've got the RFK Jr. rescheduled focus group because of the weather that is coming up. And we've got all kinds of plans that we're going to be debuting very, very quickly, I guess, as the season continues. So if you can go ahead and help us out, sign up, breakingpoints.com. We've got a lot of fun things for this election season. We want you all to help us be a part of it. But let's go ahead and start, as we said, with the New Hampshire primary. And let's actually just check in. Like, what the hell is going on over here? Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. This is just a sign of, I guess, the dwindling nature of the entire race. CNN and ABC News have both pulled the plug on the GOP primary debates in New Hampshire after both Trump and Nikki Haley critically have bailed. Krystal, this is all part of Nikki Haley's bizarre attempt to spin her third-place finish in New Hampshire as a two-person race. So she's like, I will no longer debate Ron DeSantis. I will only debate Trump. And obviously, Trump has not participated in a single debate. And so she effectively withdrew from the debate. Now, I mean, I'm not quite so sure how much it matters. I mean, this is a 5-day, basically last gasp at any attempt to try and win. We did see a single poll conducted the day of the Iowa, which actually showed Nikki Haley, within striking distance of Trump. Don't know how much to even put in stock of that. And obviously, there's a lot of rapidly shifting and changing dynamics. But it does show her that, like, this is it for her. Last 5 days. I mean, frankly, DeSantis too. Although I'm not quite so sure he realized it because he didn't have the same expectations of New Hampshire. He may actually be shifting all of his focus towards South Carolina, and I guess make that his last stand. So we'll have two last stands, I guess, in South Carolina.
There's a lot of Pete Buttigieg energy here
totally
with Nikki Haley. You'll recall that he just like declared victory in Iowa and then pretended like he was the guy, and the media sort of went along with it. And, to be honest with you, here with Nikki, like, we can't say it's not working. The media is sort of going along with it. And to be fair to her, Ron DeSantis put all his eggs in the Iowa basket. I mean, this man spent tens of millions of dollars in that state, did a massive number of events, like they were broadcasting and telling the press that they were going to make their stand in Iowa. His surrogates were all declaring, they're going to win Iowa, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a bigger disappointment for him to finish such a distant second than Nikki has always put all of her eggs in the New Hampshire basket. So basically she's saying, look, I did okay in Iowa. Let's just pretend that didn't happen. And let's move forward to the state that I actually care about, which is New Hampshire. In terms of backing out of the debates, obviously, from a democracy standpoint, I think all of these candidates, Trump included, Biden included, should have been required to do debates all along. I think it's disgusting that people feel like they can just, back out of the democratic process. However, as a tactical move, I think it's probably smart.
Yes.
I mean, number one, I don't think that it's kind of a waste of time at this point. Not that many people are watching, not that many people care. But also, she's clearly versus Ron in the driver's seat in New Hampshire. And so why give him any oxygen and any chance to make up some ground and, score some sort of a blow on her in that format? So I do think that, again, from a tactical perspective, it's probably a clever move. And while she's running on a runway, and I mean, as I said last time, I think this primary is basically over. But for Ron, the landscape is even more grim because you already lost the state that you put all your eggs in.
Mm-hmm.
There is no other state on the map where it appears, including your home state, where it appears that you're going to perform better than you did in Iowa. So, like, what's your plan here?
Yeah, I mean, to that point about why the debate would probably hurt, it just opens her up. And then, last time, actually, because we had that parallel Trump town hall versus the debate, the town hall got over double. It had like 4.4 million people watching, and the debate had like 2-some million.
And Ron did pretty decent in that last debate,
That's right.
too. People said that they thought he won. Yeah.
Right, so why would she give him that? Now, again, I agree. They should be required to debate, period. In the past, I mean, if you'll recall, Mitt Romney and all them, they were debating all the way into South Carolina. That was some crazy stuff. They had 15, almost 19 debates, the Democratic debate. Even though Obama basically won after South Carolina, Hillary and him kept on going for a long time. So it's actually sad to see like the total collapse of all this. Just to bolster your point about how some of the wagons are now circling within the GOP anti-Trump direction. Let's put this up there on the screen. The Wall Street Journal put an editorial board out on Tuesday saying that President Trump's sweeping win in Iowa, quote, should push Governor DeSantis to drop out of the GOP presidential race and give former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley a chance at beating the former president. Mr. DeSantis faces no clear path to the nomination. He's well behind her in New Hampshire and South Carolina. If he believes, as he says, that Trump cannot win in November, he should leave the race and give her a chance to take on Mr. Trump one-on-one. So, I mean, to a certain extent, I kind of do see their point, Krystal. This is probably the only chance you have to have any meaningful blow. But DeSantis himself, I mean, from a self-interested point of view, like, why would he do that? For him, he did get second in Iowa. He has no reason that he necessarily has to drop out. I mean, everyone's like, oh, you have no chance. I mean, you don't know until the votes are cast. It's one of those where it's up in the air. I don't think it's going to work out for him, but, you know, I guess we'll see. And then it all comes back to this. They say things. Do they really believe them? Like for DeSantis. DeSantis raised his hand at every debate, and he said that he would support the GOP nominee. So when Trump wins, is he going to endorse him? Yeah, he already said he would. Nikki Haley, too. I mean, by all means, it seems as she's campaigning for a vice president. There's been, actually, interestingly enough, I spotted an instance where Jason Miller, who works for Trump, the day before the Iowa caucuses, he was asked, will Vivek Ramaswamy ever be president? He said, no, I don't think so. They said, what about Nikki Haley? And he said, well, we'll see. So he kept the door open. There's previous leaks and all of that. I don't know. There's going to be a big fight within Trump world. I wouldn't personally bet on it, but for this woman, I mean, ambition is everything. Like, and she also doesn't believe anything that she says. Like, now she's against Trump. Previously, she walked back her January 6th criticism, and then before that, she was against him for January 6th. She's all over the place, and she's like, I want to call my friend President Trump to clear the air. This is before she decides to run against him. So I wouldn't put it out that all of them are just in a self-interested, you know, like march towards this, and they're just looking out what's good for them. I'm not convinced that it would be the best thing for DeSantis to drop out, because then the Trump people would say, oh, well, he tried to help Nikki. You know, the enmity would only increase. They don't believe what they're actually saying here.
So for Nikki and Ron, in terms of their self-interest, there are two possible tracks to pursue. One is the try to stay good with the MAGA base track. I think Ron DeSantis is probably more likely to go in that direction because he, even though he's been a little bit critical of Trump, like the Republican base still likes him. They don't see him as a never Trump figure. You know, he maintains support. If Trump were to drop out of the race, I think Ron would, you know, go to prison, die, whatever, for whatever reason he disappears. I think Ron DeSantis would be way better positioned to pick up his support, certainly, than Nikki Haley. So I think he's probably more likely to go in the direction of like, what am I going to do to make sure the Republican base still likes me, that I still have a future in Republican politics, given that Donald Trump is still the man? How can I get back in Donald Trump's good graces so he's not just like, you know, being mean to me all the time and humiliating me all the time, so I have some chance in the future in Republican politics? I think that is more likely the track that Ron DeSantis is going to go on. The other possible career track is the one that I think Nikki Haley is more likely to pursue, which is the let me be the darling of the media and the donor base. And let me, you know, maybe I'm positioned for more board seats and making more money. Maybe I'm positioned for some future never Trump or anti-Trump lane. Maybe I'm positioned for a CNN gig or other mainstream press gig. And she, because she has taken on almost like an anti-Trump Chris Christie vibe with the Republican base in this primary, in spite of her very conservative record, in spite of the fact that she also was very gentle with Trump. That's the way she's beginning to be seen among Republicans. I think she is more likely to pursue that track. Now, what does that mean exactly in terms of her calculation for when and how she gets out of this race? I think it's a real open question. I hadn't really thought through this until yesterday, but there is some chance that between, even if she loses New Hampshire, and even if she loses South Carolina, and even if she's going into Super Tuesday and she's way behind, there is some chance, 0.5% or whatever, that there is a black swan event and Trump is taken out of the race, and that there's some benefit to donors of having one of their representatives as like the last person standing.
That's a great point.
So I think, that may be a calculation that she makes, where even though it's completely humiliating to get blown out in all of these races by like 60%, that she may stay in there even, and accept that level of humiliation, just because that's what the donor class wants her to be, where they want her to be, just in case something unforeseen happens.
I mean, remember, Hillary stayed in until June of, to June of 2008, months and months after it was clear that she wasn't going to win. I mean, I guess she was banking more on super delegates at that time, but, the same kind of case was there. Just in case, you might be able
never know.
to do that, and that's something that Ted Cruz and John Kasich, as we all can recall, he stayed all the way until the end of the primary. So Vivek Ramaswamy, obviously, we covered the news on Tuesday, dropping out of the race on Monday night in Iowa after he only was able to get 8%, finished fourth. Immediately not only endorsed Trump, but is now actively joining the campaign. He campaigned with Trump in New Hampshire, now taking to the airwaves, mostly on Fox, calling on Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley to drop out. Let's take a listen to what he said.
I think that you guys may have seen some of the rally that we had, and the response was overwhelming. And I think it's very clear who the Republican primary electorate is saying that they want to be their nominee. I ran to be that person. They sent me a very positive message, but the very positive message they sent to all of us is that Donald Trump needs to be the nominee of this party. And I think Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley would actually at this point do this country and this party a service by stepping aside to make sure that we're focused on not only nominating Donald Trump, but getting this country back and reviving those founding revolutionary ideals. And I think we do live in that 1776 moment right now. We need to win.
You're calling on Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis to drop out right now.
I am. And I do think that would be healthy for this country. And I think that, especially Ron DeSantis, at least of the two of them, will have an important role to play in the future of this country and leading this nation. I do believe that. But I think that the right thing to do right now is the people of this country through the Iowa caucus. It's the most grassroots process I've seen. I personally did over 390 events, built great relationships and goodwill, but the message they sent was clear. I think it's time to actually make sure we elect the right president.
So to underscore your point as well, Krystal, with that, let's put this up there on the screen. The Ron DeSantis super PAC is actually having layoffs on the very same time that he would try to win in New Hampshire. They appear to be putting all of their efforts, as we said, on South Carolina. They're basically writing off the state. Nikki Haley's got much more, not only never Trump type, anti-Trump sympathetic voters, but New Hampshire's got the open primary process. And since we don't have an active Democratic primary, or do we, which we will get to just in a second, it's one of those where we could see some crossover voters who come in and support her as some sort of last-ditch effort. So all of this is kind of pointing to the fact that it's do or die, for Nikki Haley, and Trump is basically treating it that way. He's not even really paying attention to Ron DeSantis. Let's put this up there. After following on, he had originally had a birther attack on Nikki. Now he's going with this. Anyone listening to Nikki Nimrata Haley, it's actually Nimrata, whacked out speech last night would think she won the Iowa primary. She didn't, and she couldn't even beat a very flawed Ron DeSanctimonious, who's out of money and out of hope. Nikki came in at a distant third. She said she would never run against me. He was a great president. She should have followed her own advice. She's now stuck with weak policies and a very strong MAGA base. There's just nothing that she can do. So, look, he seems to be treating it as a one-on-one, and actually the Trump people are on the ground in New Hampshire. They seem to be feeling good about it. Let's just underscore the one chance Nikki has, which is she's got a hell of a lot of money. She's got more money than Ron DeSantis right now. She's got the billionaire class behind her, and she's got the possibility. I mean, at this point, it's not even fair to call it a black swan event because it's totally predictable. It's like a white swan. It's just like, when is it going to flap its wings? And that's Trump's legal problems. To what extent are they going to be there? Nobody knows. Just to give everybody an idea, Trump currently is fighting his second defamation case against E. Jean Carroll. We can put that up there. That's happening right now, actually, with a federal judge actually coming down on Trump. They're saying that you can be kicked out of this trial if you keep making disparaging comments that the jury could hear. Then he's been putting stuff out on Truth Social as well previously, previously she'd already sought and won damages against him. Now she's going for it a second time after, I believe it was a previous Truth Social case that came out afterwards. I mean, obviously, you know, I believe her case is being bankrolled by, what is it, Reid Hoffman, the Democratic billionaire. Regardless, it obviously worked already in terms of the defamation against him. Now we're getting to the second case that's against him. She's basically trying to bleed money from him and just keep him tied up in court. But that's the least of his problems. Money he at least has, or at least appears to have. Everything else, like, that's not necessarily one you can just pay your way out of. You've got the Georgia case, although, you know, we've got problems there, which we've covered. But I mean, at the same time, I always have to come back to the documents. I have to remind myself, as you did the last time we were discussing that one is just open and shut. Like, there's no January 6th, like, First Amendment, Supreme Court, like, not even the court can save you on that one. And that's why Trump, his last truth, actually, just this morning, was about how the president should have total immunity while he's in office. Because I think he does seem to understand. It's like, look, he's got a chance on Jan 6. He's got at the court, not necessarily with the jury. He's got a chance-ish, I guess, with election law and free speech and all that. But the documents case, I mean, that's one where after he was president, so he no longer has the same level of immunity. And given the fact that his own administration argued against the same classification standards that he is trying to prop up for like why he didn't do anything wrong, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to, like, there's different factors in all these cases. The Florida one, he does have going for him that it's not in D.C.
Right.
You know, he could get a more favorable jury pool. He seems to have a judge who's much more sympathetic towards him, so he had some things going for him there. Not really in terms of necessarily winning, but his whole strategy is to drag this out so that he has a chance to win at the ballot box and then get himself out of all of his legal trouble that way. The D.C. cases, you know, they are trickier from a legal perspective, but he has less friendly judges and, you know, a potentially less friendly jury pool. And so, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, the big question with all of these things is the timeline. And the other question is, when you have so much legal jeopardy in multiple states, multiple charges, what is it, like 91 different charges, you're going to run the table on all of them? It seems unlikely. So that is the big thing that's hanging over all of this. But in terms of the Republican primary, it seems very unlikely that any of this comes to a conclusion before he's the official Republican nominee. So, you know, perhaps some of these trials conclude before the general election, perhaps, but I think it's highly unlikely that there is such an expedited process that any of this comes to fruition before he is officially the Republican nominee. And so, you know, that's kind of where we are. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.